You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Well, I have been temporarily blocked from Facebook. Well, great.
What?
How did that?
Here's what Facebook has said. You've been temporarily blocked from performing this action. We were just barely allowed back on Facebook. So now we're here. You know what? We're just going to have this be the cold introduction. Hello, everybody, except for Facebook users. Apparently, we're banned again from Facebook because of our hardcore radical takes about freedom and loving your neighbor, which we can't have any of that going around because that'll kill everybody.
Banned, can't you?
Lauren's got all this contraband. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome to Enemy My Enemy. I am Hodey Johns.
I'm Ryan Graham.
And I'm Lou McKinnon.
And this is the show. I appreciate y'all joining us today. Sorry about that unprofessional introduction. But from here on out, it's going to be nothing but straight-laced conversation. You can tell by all the liquor we aren't drinking right now that this is going to be a very professional conversation.
I apologize in advance if my dogs decide to join the conversation as well.
That's all right. That's the only thing that celebrates us from CBS. And frankly, I don't want the power. They're just too big. I'm not ready for that responsibility yet.
My other podcast is literally three people drinking and talking about sports. So three people drinking and talking about, well, some of us are drinking, and talking about politics is pretty much right up my alley anyway.
Yeah, so this is a show, guys, where we represent right, left, and center libertarian values. We got kind of a hodgepodge of the right, left, and center today because some of the, you know how scheduling works with hosting, but we'll make sure everybody is well represented. Whatever your libertarian walk of life is, you'll be represented. So today we're going to discuss the menthol ban. CBS reports started whispers were coming out about on the 28th. CBS reported on the 29th that this ban actually came directly from the White House and to the FDA. The FDA was the one releasing the statement, but CBS was the one that reports that the White House was working on them with it. According to the FDA's website on this one, fda.gov, menthol is the only flavor of cigarette that has not been banned. So this ban that they actually are not asking for permission. There is nothing to pass. Many people are wondering, like, if it'll pass Congress. It does not need to. This is a ban that will ban menthol, which is the last flavor of cigarette, and it will ban all flavors of cigars, which there are quite a few of those. So it's not just a menthol ban. To quote, I'm going to read a few things from the FDA because, hey, we want to make sure we get their perspective on this one. Efforts to ban menthol cigarettes, ban flavored cigars build on previous flavor ban and mark significant steps to reduce addiction and youth experimentation, improve quitting, and address health disparities. So the disparities is a part of this. There's a lot of people talking about the racial disparities and how this will disproportionately affect the African-American community. The FDA is aware of that, and that's part of the reason they actually are making this decision. According to them, banning menthol, the last allowable flavor in cigarettes, and banning all flavors in cigars will help save lives, particularly among those disproportionately affected by these deadly products. With these actions, the FDA will help significantly reduce youth initiation, increase the chances of smoking cessation among current smokers, and address health disparities experienced by communities of color, low-income populations, and LGBTQ plus individuals, all of whom are far more likely to use these tobacco products. That is a quote from FDA Commissioner Janet Woodcock, MD. Together, these actions represent powerful science-based approaches that will have an extraordinarily public health impact. Armed with strong scientific evidence and with full support from the administration, we believe these actions will launch us in a trajectory towards ending tobacco-related disease and death in the U.S. Now, to quote them, and this is also on their website, this is not something that they have to pass through Congress. And this is again on fda.gov. This isn't something they're hiding. This is in their introductory paragraph. The authority to adopt product standards is one of the most powerful tobacco regulatory tools Congress gave the agency. This decision is based on clear science, evidence, yada, yada. But basically, they have the power to just say, we're banning it, and it's done. There's nothing that it has to pass. The FDA has the power to do this. I guess we'll start with Lauren. Lou, give us your thoughts on the menthol ban.
Well,
for those who are purely listening, what are you doing?
I'm going to smoke a menthol cigarette. No. So are we allowed to cuss on this show? Because
I told Chris to mark everything we do as explicit.
Nice.
Perfect. Because fuck this shit. They're trying to come off like this is helping the poor community and the Black community and the marginalized communities and all this bullshit. And the reality is, it's all of the communities that they don't mention smoke less in general, right? Not just that they smoke more menthols, they smoke more cigarettes, more cigars. Well, okay, they purchase cigars. We purchase cigars. We don't always smoke cigars. Because I can promise you the flavors they're talking about banning from cigars are not your like hoity-toity pipe tobacco that it's aged in some whiskey barrel. No, they're talking about the grape blunts at 7-Eleven. We all know what they're doing, right? So they're limiting some of those things that, God, I don't know. I'm so mad about the entire thing. So then just the fact that they're using stereotypes they don't even realize how racist they are and how much they're the ones stereotyping people and how much they're the ones criminalizing. And like, did we forget about Eric Garner? Really? Like, do we need to have that discussion again? Is that even necessary? Because all this is going to do is put more of those people of color, people in marginalized communities, low-income communities in the position to have those interactions with police again. And of course, their argument will start with, well, no. It's just a ban on, buying and selling retail. Okay, well, then it becomes, well, you can't buy it or sell it. Where'd you get it? And that becomes its own problem. And then we're looking at more legislation and more rules and things that the government's going to tell me what to do with my body, which that in and of itself just makes me cringe. So, sorry, my dogs are fighting again. I get it. I'm angry too. And I look at Biden and Harris and think, okay, they made their careers on enforcing unjust drug laws and writing them and all of these things, right? So we can go back to, the 80s and crack in communities of color, right? And then the 90s and 2000s, and it was marijuana. Now, granted, we didn't legalize crack, but it kind of, I won't say it stopped being a thing, but it was used to target people of color, low-income communities, and lock them up. And same thing with marijuana. Just as many white people smoke pot as Black people, but we don't get pulled over for it. And now that, the entire country wants to legalize marijuana, Biden and Harris are like, well, shit, we've built our careers on punishing that and punishing those communities, right, for a vice. So now let's pick a new one. And it's all bullshit. They tried this several years ago, and they got sued. And it went away. It didn't happen. I don't think it's going to happen. The tobacco companies still, granted, they're losing their hold on Congress, but the lobbyists are still there. It's still a thing. And unless, maybe this is some push for any of the tobacco companies that are pivoting to vape, but they've outlawed so many vape products or ability or access. So that doesn't make sense either. So you're going to have the tobacco lobbyists, lawsuits, the whole thing. I just don't see it happening. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And there's always something.
Heyo. Sorry.
Right? But it's a bunch of menthol, smoke, and mirrors. So I'll be there. Like, I feel like I jumped all over the place, but there are probably like 3 or 4 different issues that are such a problem with this entire ban that it's hard to choose one. You know, it's always a money grab. You sound like you're taking care of this, that, or the other community, but you're not. You're really just targeting them. Anyway, I'm going to smoke a menthol because it pissed me off.
Hodey, I can't hear you.
Lou, thank you for your thoughts on that one. Ryan, how do you feel?
Yeah, I wanted to add that I don't think necessarily a lot of these laws are created with the intention of targeting communities of color. But as libertarians, we understand that, Bastiat taught us the on scene and the on scene, right? The unforeseen consequences of your actions. And so, if Eric Garner taught us anything, it's that laws against tobacco cause friction between peaceful citizens, and police that are needless. They're unnecessary, and they're going to cause death. They can cause death. And a lot of people will say that it was his resistance that caused it. But I mean, why shouldn't you resist, selling a couple of loosies on the corner, being arrested for selling a couple of loosies on the corner? Also, anyone that watched that video knows that Eric Garner did not, in fact, resist arrest. He was very cordial throughout the entire thing. So you go in and I made fun of the menthol thing, and they did actually very explicitly target communities of color in that. They just made it sound real nice for whatever reason. They said, we're trying to help them. Instead, they're creating more friction between law enforcement and those communities. And then they went on with the flavored cigars, which, so I live in a community that is predominantly Black, and we do a park cleanup, and a lot of what we clean up, I'm not going to lie, is flavored cigars, tons of them. And back when I smoked a lot of pot, we smoked a lot of blunts. I loved blunts, man. That was a lot of fun. I don't smoke a lot of pot these days. I drink a lot more now. But like flavored cigars made really good blunts. I'll tell you that. And so I can't help but think they're targeting cannabis users with things like that. And again, communities of color. And, I don't think they think that they're going to hurt those communities, but that is in fact what the outcome will be. We have data on this. We've seen it throughout history. This is exactly what's going to happen. And then you look at this administration, and when they have been asked about cannabis in the last month, they have actually come out and said, we're too busy to address this. We're working on the pandemic. But then they come out with nonsense like this with the menthols and the flavored cigars. And you're like, okay, so you're too busy to deal with the victimization of people who peacefully use a drug, but you're going to outlaw this other thing. You're not too busy to outlaw this thing that's been legal forever, and that will impact communities of color they campaigned on, we're your ally, and it's like, here's what that allyship gained you. Congratulations. So it just seems like in the face of Eric Garner, they're deaf. It's like they don't learn anything. It's like, I like to say that politicians can't see 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead, whatever, but they can't see 1 step ahead. I mean, we have hard evidence of this happening, and they can't see anything like that. So, all this will do is, whether or not they intended institutional racism or anything like that, it just gives cops a reason to go and provide friction in a community, whatever community that they happen to be policing. Typically, these days, they are over-policing communities of color for whatever reason that you want to say, right? I mean, there are people who will argue that there are more crimes happening in those communities, and so therefore they should be policing those communities more. So regardless, they will be taking this new law and causing more friction in the communities they are policing more heavily, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah, the racism is kind of an icing on the cake for this argument, because it's wrong regardless, right? You're looking at people who are doing voluntary interactions, and you're looking at policing voluntary interaction, which is always bad. And in this case, especially, the racism is just the icing on the cake. It is, if we have a systemically racist system, and we have a justice system that punishes black offenders more than white offenders, if everybody commits 3 felonies a day, and yet we've filled up our prisons with black people, then look at the felonies that they're choosing to enforce. Even those who are guilty of those felonies, they're choosing to enforce the ones against those who are predominantly black as opposed to those who are white. Now, you could dismiss all that. And like I said, this is still problematic, but I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand, because people don't like racism. And I think the reason it's important to talk about this being racist in practice is because it does not matter the nice things you say. People joke about all the time how be like the Republicans are like, this is authority, and then the Democrats are like, this is authority, but BLM and and Black Lives Matter, and it's like, this is exactly it. What we got is we got worse messaging from Trump, but we're getting more racist policies from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I guess that shouldn't surprise us, because they've spent their whole lives being the architect of racist policies. And I don't know what's in their hearts. God judge them. Biden said things like he doesn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. So he hasn't exactly painted himself in a way that's going to make me give him any benefit of the doubt. But ultimately, one of my favorite speakers from FEE is TK Coleman. And he says, I don't judge racism by what people's intent are, because I have no idea. I can't see into people's hearts. I judge by their actions. What was the effect of this policy? Was it racist? Then yeah, it's racist. I'm only going to make a judgment based on evidence and not on assumption. And this is one of those things that is racist in evidentiary. And heck, the FDA just goes ahead and says it themselves. Who is this predominantly going to affect? Apparently it's transphobic as well, because they even mention how they're looking at targeting the LGBTQ plus community from that. I think it's funny, even in the FDA, you can tell how out of date these people are that write it, because the modern lingo for LGBTQ is GSM, gender and sexual minorities. But the FDA doesn't know that, because they're not in tune. They're not in touch. They're a bunch of geezers. So they cite 2 studies. I clicked on each of them because I felt like I should at least give them the benefit of the doubt to see what because they're like, well, we projected a lot. And then they use this example from Canada. And one of the studies talks about, it refers to the black community as the blacks all the time. And I'm just like, oh, guys, probably cite one that's less bigoted and not happening. You guys are the FDA is, like I said, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They admit they're targeting these communities. They say they're targeting them for their benefit. How many times has this happened throughout history? It's wrong then. It's wrong now. Prohibition hurt and killed a great deal of people who wanted to voluntarily drink. I have never touched a drop of alcohol. I've never smoked weed. I've never touched weed. I've never done a cannabinoid. I've never done an opioid. I've never done any of this stuff. But ultimately, even if I wanted to become the epitome and the icon of selfishness and only care about myself and nobody else, why should my tax dollars pay 1 cent for somebody else who's making a voluntary decision to put something into their bodies? I don't recall wanting to pay for somebody else's room and board because of a decision they make that I disagree with. I understand. You look at some of these things. Look, it's not a mystery that smoking is a carcinogenic. So many things are. But here's the thing. Look at things that are unhealthy for you, like cigarettes. Okay. And look at the people. Oh, the menthol cigarette. Well, that's a black person problem. Let's criminalize that. Oh, let's see. Oh, those white people problems, like getting obese from overly saturated sugar sodas. I mean, they've done things like institute taxes on them before, but look what on the federal level. It's just caffeine. It's just full sugar soda. We don't care. And that's the problem with this whole thing, is if it's really done for the sake of making people healthy, are you comfortable with that? Of giving the federal government the decision of what is healthy for you, of what is not. These are the same people that have used their power to euthanize classes of people, to sterilize classes of people. They instigate wars. We've already seen, even in this, what they're proposing now, and we don't have, unfortunately, the words in front of us because they just say they're going to do it. But based on this proposal, this isn't going to be targeted towards manufacturers, just manufacturers. This is going to be enforced on the streets. This isn't going to be one of those things that's fought with lawyers where they say, oh, it looks like you're trying to manufacture a certain spice or a certain cigarette here. This is no different than when the Cubans, right? When you're banning Cuban cigars, who paid the price for that when they caught you with a Cuban cigar? Did they go and seek out your supplier and try to stop that? Or did they just bust the people who were smoking them? And that's exactly what this is going to be too. Ultimately, they don't want the people at the top. They don't want to actually fix the problem. They want to punish the people who are participating in a certain behavior. We can find it reprehensible all day. And I do have some friends who favor this policy. And I understand where they're coming from, because it's a flavor that appeals to children, right? And they think that this is targeting kids, and kids shouldn't smoke, and we shouldn't give our kids drugs. All right. I mean, say I agree with that, right? We shouldn't give our kids drugs, alcohol, right? Like, until they're ready to make those decisions. But at the end of the day, is this something you want to enforce for you and your family? Or is this something you want a politician to enforce on your behalf? Like I said, we have a litany of history to see how they protect the children. And we have how you would protect the children. And which one would you rather trust? I guess that about does it for my thoughts on the round table. But I think for me, I cannot see myself, even as a non-smoker, ever dreaming of passing this law and not looking like it's very backwards. Kamala Harris tweeted that they didn't have time yet to decriminalize marijuana, but they did have time they said they're too busy, right? But they did have time to do this. It takes more time to draft a new law than to decriminalize an old law. So their time priorities are wrong. I mean, this is literally, they promise we're going in this libertarian direction because it sounds really awesome. And then we're going to go in this statist direction that isn't awesome, but it's for those dumb black people who don't know any better, versus my white kid who's smoking crack in my basement, who I'm going to withhold and prevent from my law. I don't want my law affecting my white kid. I only want it affecting your black kids. That is Joe Biden. That is a huge problem. That's why I could not bring myself to even fathom voting for him. And I'm so glad I didn't. I sleep a lot better.
I'll say Biden spent his entire career crafting legislation that criminalized substances, and Harris has spent her entire career prosecuting those laws. And so it's no surprise to me to see that these two people who were elected, these old school, they're old school drug warriors. That they see, they're like, it's like hammers and nails, right? That's the metaphor we always see. A hammer sees a problem and they just hammer it like a nail. And I'm probably butchering that. I'm a little tipsy, but but that's what they end up doing. And so, they go in, and I honestly believe they have the best intentions, that they're targeting minority groups. They are explicitly targeting minority groups with coercion, though, because all they know is coercion. All they know is violence. They only know to threaten people to do better in whatever way that is. I don't even necessarily think this is better, but that's the only way they know how to do this. So it's no surprise to me. This is the reason they wouldn't get my vote. It's the reason Republicans wouldn't get my vote, because they're the same thing. But longtime drug warriors, implement coercion to stop this.
Completely agree.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's tough to have a debate about this because it's not something that has kind of a libertarian element for to support. Right. I guess you could argue the kids angle. Like, should businesses let's throw this out there. Let me throw this out there to you two, just so we have something to argue about, because right now we have nothing. Is there? Would you say a business has the right to target children with their advertising for a drug or alcoholic product?
Lou, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I consider myself pretty far left. What that does is now you are enticing someone who is not old enough to consent. You are putting someone in danger, right? So right there is a violation of the NAP, because we know that young children do not fully comprehend the consequences of their actions, particularly when it comes to something like smoking, drinking, drugs, things like that, because they don't see an immediate consequence, right? So their brains aren't that developed, which is why we say, like, at a certain age, children cannot consent to sex or, consent to working, because people take advantage of them. That's why we have child labor laws, right? And it's the same thing. Like, no, I don't think it's infringing on the business's rights to say, no, you can't advertise this for children. It's telling you, like, no, you can't exploit people who don't know better to do something that's potentially dangerous to their health. I am an adult. I am fully aware of what smoking can do to your health. I've seen it firsthand. My grandfather passed away from cancer, and he had lung cancer, and he had cancer in several places, but he smoked a pipe and things like that for years. Like, so obviously you can't deny that was a contributing factor. I am aware. I am responsible for my own actions. A child cannot make those decisions. And so when a business who is full of adults making their decisions on marketing techniques and target audiences says, hey, let's target children, yes, that's a problem. Do I feel like menthol cigarettes have ever been actively targeted at children? No. I mean, could you say, like, okay, the flavor is more pleasing? Sure. Yeah, obviously that's why I smoke them. I think regular cigarettes taste like smoking cardboard. It's disgusting. But as a kid, I think it's an acquired taste, right? When I was like 6 years old, I woke up one morning, and I guess my parents had like a glass of wine the night before, and went to bed and left one of the cups out with a little bit of wine in it. And I thought it was grape juice. So I took a big old swig, and I'm like somewhere between 6 and 8, and I died. Like, it was the most horrible thing ever. I love wine now, right? So there's nothing about a menthol cigarette in my mind as someone who started smoking at 13, right? I was 13 years old the first time I picked up a cigarette. And I'll never forget, there was a girl I thought was really cool. We were like 6th grade, and I had just moved to town, and she invited me over. We're on the phone, and she's like, hey, come over to my house. I'm like, okay. And I hear her ask her mom for a lighter. I mean, a candle or something. And then I hear her mom respond, go light it on the stove. I was a little confused. I didn't think anything of it. So I go to her house. This girl at 13 years old in 6th grade lights up a cigarette in front of her mom in the house. Like, it was the wildest thing I've ever seen. But I, being a dumb kid, was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And she asked if I smoked. And I was like, well, duh, doesn't everybody? And she handed me a Newport, and I thought I was going to die. Right? It was awful. So I don't understand what it is that people consider appealing to children about the flavor itself. It is 10 times harsher than a standard cigarette. There's no way a kid's going to hit one of those and be like, oh, this is fantastic. They're going to be like, oh my God, I'm dying. Right? It's such an excuse to me. So, then at 13, I started picking my dad's like half-smoked cigarette Camels that were non-menthol. I didn't touch menthols again until much later. So no, they're not targeted to children. No, retail should not be like targeting children is a problem.
What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I don't think just like Lou said, I don't know of any evidence that this has targeted children in general. I spent my teenage years smoking quite a bit of cannabis. I started a little earlier than most people, due to having an older brother who used, and I just got into it. He used a lot of other drugs that I didn't get into, but cannabis was there. And one time I decided to light his menthol for him. He thought that'd be a good idea for whatever reason. And I lit it and inhaled, and it was one of the nastiest things I've ever had in my life. It was disgusting. And I've never smoked another cigarette since. There was one other example of me smoking tobacco from a cigarette, and it was on accident. It was like these stories you hear about people who do cannabis who we all have friends who have done angel dust, right? But we don't have any friends who have done angel dust on purpose. No one's done it on purpose. And
Sprinkled on someone's joint, wasn't it? Like,
exactly. It's always a trick. It's a terrible trick, and nobody should ever do that to anyone else. But I was hanging out with these people, and they were passing around this joint, and I was coughing like a maniac. And I was like, what is wrong with this joint? And they were like, oh, it's a spliff. And for those of you who don't know, a spliff is 50-50 cannabis and tobacco. And I had no idea, but I was miserable from it. I mean, it was terrible. And that's the only other cigarette I've ever smoked after a menthol, because I don't want to touch it. Like, it was nasty. So I don't think that it's, I think any kind of excuse that says it's targeting minors is pretty ridiculous. And even if it were, I think kids make mistakes and they experience things, and they need to experience things. I needed to experience the taste of that really shitty menthol to never go back to it again. My dad, when I was younger, he gave me a little taste of Jaeger and a Bud Light when I was probably 9 at a party. And it was nasty. I didn't drink again till I was 21. Like, no joke. I didn't drink another drop of alcohol until I was 21. My kid, when she was young and she was teething, we wrote whiskey on her gums, so that's no big deal. But I gave her a taste of beer while we were grilling one day. She's 5 now, by the way. It was probably when she was 4 or so. And now I'm like, you want a beer? And she's like, nope, not at all. Not one bit, Dad. That's silly. I want juice. Give me juice.
So you're saying the whiskey on the gums was not a gateway drug into hard drinking at 5. Okay.
No, and I think there's some parenting techniques that are involved here, right? I mean, you go in and you can let your child experience life and teach them to make good decisions for themselves. And I know not everybody gets to do that, but you can't go, even if they're targeting in their marketing minors, it doesn't matter. Like, parenting is really where it's at. Like, that's really where the responsibility lies. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I get. That's kind of where I get to.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that distinction, because that's kind of how I feel about this as well. Do I want politicians deciding whether an ad is targeting a child or not, and if it should or not, and if it's okay to target a child or not, or would I rather myself, my family, society, even culture, determine whether it's okay to, do these certain things? And, and I think it affords us the room to experiment and study and see how people's lives turn out, without the threat of violence hanging over us. A lot of people, especially in Libertarians, we love to cite Portugal all the time, right? They legalized their drugs and looks what happened. Now, it should be known that the drug rate usage increased before it decreased, because it's still a mystery. There's still a wonder there. There's still a not knowledge there. And I think we do ourselves a disservice, not us Libertarians, but just society, by pretending that being galvanized doesn't exist, right? Like, we say, oh, we ban it. Well, then all the rebels do it, kind of because it's banned, right? Like, because that's the cool thing. And we want to pretend that's not a thing. We want to think everybody just hears an educational thing for the first time and says, oh, yes, this is true wisdom. I need never explore this for myself, because all these superiors who have been lording over me for my whole life tell me it's bad. And I absolutely love the heck out of them. So, I mean, these are the same people that told you that Santa Claus was real, telling you that drugs are bad. So ultimately, you're going to get a little bit of a complex and say, like, well, if I find out that Santa's not real, sorry, kids, you shouldn't be listening anyway. We use swear words and talk about giving whiskey to babies. So go to sleep. Go to sleep, you little tykes. Anyway, the swears. I am the squarest square.
I feel like everyone should know that I asked you if you were a Mormon before we came on.
I thought it was so funny because I said something when we were in a chat the other day, and I was like, heckin' something or other. Which is, it's this weird mo slip that I never have anymore because I left years ago, but I said heckin', and I thought, oh, Hodey's gonna get a kick out of that.
And I did. I may not be Mormon, but I am a loser, darn it. And so that's why I am drug free.
Fair.
It's one of those things that, like, yeah, some people can like hear the wisdom and some people need to experience it. But I think the thing is it's okay. Colorado, another great example. When marijuana got legalized, there was a small crime burst when people were first experimenting, like testing it out, testing the waters, right? What's that?
What do you mean by crime?
So it was something released by the Denver Police Department, and when you ask, I usually like to have specifics on hand. Unfortunately, I'm talking about this conversation.
I'm sorry.
So forgive me if I'm not exactly doing it. But
you can generalize here.
It was the Denver Police Commissioner. Yeah. They released a statement, and they did say, like, "Hey, here's where our carjackings are at. Here's where it was burglaries and theft specifically is what they were looking at." Yeah. And it went up, and then it went down, and then it went down to lower than what it was before. So the thing is it's not like there's not going to be any hiccups. I understand when you legalize all flavors of all cigars, might somebody who has never tried a cigar before decide to try cigar flavors, grape flavored cigar. Somebody would be like, yeah, grape
them
sounds
good. No, them Swisher Sweets. That's
Swisher Sweets. Okay.
Swisher Sweets. Yeah, that's good. That's good blunt rolling cigars.
Oh, I should have mentioned, this does include what you roll stuff with. So if you do have any wraps that are flavored, it's not just the substance itself. This is also flavored wraps. So if you're
thinly veiled targeting cannabis users, just so we're all very clear here, like they ran on a platform of legalizing cannabis or descheduling it or whatever they said, but making it easier on you. And what they're actually doing is they're targeting cannabis users because menthol users are cannabis users. Just so we're all very clear. It's not black people. It's not LGBTQ or GSM or whatever we want to say. It's pot smokers. They smoke menthols. And blunt smokers have flavored cigars. They cut them open. They take all the tobacco out. They put pot in there and they smoke them because that's delicious. So they are actually just fighting the war on drugs that they've been fighting for decades and decades and decades because these are old school drug warriors.
I didn't realize that marijuana and Black and Milds actually smell differently from each other until I was like 20.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm going to share this because Jackie knows more than what I had to say. She said tobacco boosts the effects of cannabis.
Yes.
I believe that. Yeah, it probably has something to do with like how it enters the bloodstream or something. Yeah.
It's just go ahead.
So, okay, as someone who partakes in the evening, I'm not a daily, all day wake and bake. No, it is medicinal. It is at night. It is only specific indica strains because I have horrible, horrible insomnia. I also have lupus and fibromyalgia. So I take it for pain, inflammation, nausea, appetite, which you wouldn't know. Obviously it works, right? And all kinds of things, and sleep and all of that. And I'll have like a tiny little bit, and then go have a cigarette, and then I sleep like a rock. Every time. It just puts you over that edge. I don't know how else to describe it.
And this is where it kind of comes to be it's very much judgmental in the end. And that is I make no bones about it. I do keep my faith separate from my politics, but I am a Christian person, and Christ warned over and over that judgment is the worst thing you can do. That's what keeps you out of heaven, is being judgmental. How do you get judged? Based on how you judge other people. Stop with the judgment. I don't know how many times he has to say it, but it happened over and over. And ultimately, these things are they are against my faith. And so when I say I am against combining my faith with my politics, this is something where somebody's faith and their judgment is now being enacted against other people. And here's the real issue. I'll hop off of the religious thing for a second, but here's my problem when somebody is judgmental, is that they are saying, this is how I will treat somebody else, but not myself. Because ultimately, and I know I made this point already, but when it's Joe Biden's kid smoking crack, what does he get? Joe Biden did everything right by his kid, by the way, when his kid had a drug problem. Keep him in the basement, throw opportunities at them, give them a means, give them rehab, give them help, tell them you love them, reinforce them. What did he do when it was somebody else's black kid who smoked weed? Throw him in prison. Put him in. He said the Republicans were the only reason he couldn't get the death sentence for these people. He wanted them gone for life or dead. He managed to compromise down to like 25 years or whatever it is for some of these people, ripping them away, taking away their opportunities, making felony registry lists, making all these things that took away. And ultimately I guess I want to say Hunter Biden is a great example of improvement. I should have used somebody else. Some people improve, their lives when they have this love and this insulatory system, and it gives them a chance to say, you know what, I worked through it and I got out. But ultimately, this isn't his kid. This is somebody else's kid. And this is the problem that we have, because these laws do not make any kind of judgment. It's one of the reasons I lean heavily towards anarchy, because it's just one of those things that I say, is there anything I'm comfortable making a law on that it's 100% all the time? Throw away the key, you go to jail, police officers come to your door and knock you down and enforce it. That list is very few things. And one of those things that should absolutely not be, I watched a video. It kind of changed my life a little bit. I used to be a very conservative person, right-leaning person. I kind of was never like big on the drug war, but I was always very snide. I guess if you brought up your drug use, I would have said something about like, oh yeah, it's your right to kill yourself, idiot, and all that stuff. And then people are like, man, I'm just telling you now, it helps me relax. Like it makes me like a better person and treat people better. And if, and I'm just telling you how it is with me. But I remember I watched this video, and I don't know why, because human life should matter more than dogs. But this dog was having a seizure, and this guy took an illegal substance and rubbed it on the inside of his dog's gums, and the dog stopped having a seizure. And right then and there, I said, nope, government out of it. Dogs need to be allowed to not have scary seizures, and we need to be allowed to treat them however. And you know what? I guess the humans as well. Why not? But that was what made the decision for me.
We're not going to fake. Like, people get their kids to fake stuff all the time, right? And so I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember that exact video. And I remember there had been videos of children, and these like uber right-leaning like prohibitionists would always have these nasty comments like, oh, that kid is faking it. And I'm like, that kid is a kid and has a condition out that pharmaceuticals obviously are not doing the job. Our medical system is not doing the job. And that's a show for a whole other day, right?
Yeah.
But, they give them these CBD or THC drops, and then like their seizures stop, right? And then, it's fake. But the dog, right? I don't think you're the only one that had that moment, right? I think a lot of people thought, oh, shit, like a dog's not going to fake that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but that could be what clicked for me. Yeah. Because
like subconsciously, like you're a nice guy. You're not going to be like, oh, that kid's a liar. Like,
Right. Right. Well, like it's a good point, because when you see a look of fear in a kid's eyes, you can say like, well, maybe they're scared of their parents, or maybe, at least I can reassure them. When you see the look of fear in like a dog's or an animal's eyes, like it's different. It's like there's no coercion there, I guess. Sorry, continue, Lou. I interrupted.
No, I kind of actually interrupted you, I think. No, I was just agreeing with you. And I think that may be one of the things that really pivoted the discussion around marijuana legalization is the benefits of it. And speaking of the benefits, this is so funny. So obviously, here in Indiana, Donald Rainwater ran against Holcomb for governor, and another lefty who got 2 votes or something. I don't know who he was. And I'm a lefty. Like, it's crazy. I didn't know who this guy was. Anyway, so Rainwater, of course, part of his platform was, we're between Michigan and Ohio. Like, why are we not legalizing? We could have amazing industry here. We have great agricultural land and all kinds of amazing stuff out here. So we could really make cannabis a boon for our economy. And then in the same debate, Holcomb was asked about legalizing. And he was like, well, there hasn't been enough research done, and we're going to wait for the federal blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of shaking my head, and I'm going, the amount of research out there is innumerable, right? I started my college career in 2003. I started college, right? And I say college career because there's been 10 years of college because I can't make up my mind what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's not that I have a bunch of degrees. I just don't know what I'm doing.
I did the same thing. Hop back and forth 8 different things. You're totally
right. So, and there was all this discussion around that. And research back then, I did papers on it back then, and there was a ton of research. And that was almost 20 years ago. And so I was talking to some of the other libertarians up here. I was like, all right, so let's say, hypothetically, the Biden-Harris administration fully legalizes or decriminalizes on a federal level. I could see Holcomb backpedaling, right? Because he executes with his personal morals more so than, from a political standard, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can see this happening. Well, I know they did it federally, but it was under a lot of, cultural pressure, social pressure, and blah, blah, blah. I'm still waiting on the research. And so we have decided that if he says that, and I have all of the links, I'm going to print every piece of research I can find on the benefits of cannabis, print them on paper, and just go dump them on his lawn. It's going to be beautiful. I'm waiting. Oh,
it sounds like an awesome protest.
I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing. Yeah, it's going to be expensive to print that much, but so worth it.
Seems worth it.
You bring up a good point because almost in every year they're like, well, every place that hasn't legalized it yet has a budget ballot on the measure that's like, well, we want to examine or create a study or create a commission that explores it's like, man, that work is done, you guys. Ryan, I'll give you any last words on this, and then we'll move on to pieces of our mind.
No, I think I'm good. We have talked this menthol thing to death. I think we even moved on already. So, I mean, if we want to talk about cannabis, I'll just say that Georgia's in the same boat where we're going to be the last state in the South to legalize cannabis. We have low THC CBD oil, and that's it. And the people that are in our capital right now, they just won't hear it. It's weird. They just will not hear it at all, and it's weird because the conversation has shifted to oil completely. And so we talk about flower, and it's like that's not even what people expect. So we're like, oh well, it's legalized for medical, and it's like, well, it's not, because flower's not legalized. What are you talking about? it's pretty silly. So, I don't think that's what the subject is, so I won't get into that. But the war on drugs is pretty silly, and the ban on menthol and flavored cigars is just an extension on the war on drugs, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, said that some people got fired for admitting that they had smoked marijuana, right? And she said, it's only like 8 people.
To work from home.
Right, yeah. These aren't even people who are there. These are like work from home, like interns. Can you think of somebody who works at the White House who has admitted smoking marijuana that didn't get fired?
I could think of at least one, and it might be the second most powerful person in our country.
Yeah, there you go.
It's okay.
Right.
So to her credit, she lied about it because she talked about using in a time which didn't make any sense. She was saying that she used to smoke while she was listening to Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac back before Biggie Smalls and Tupac were anybody worth listening to. I mean, they were always worth something worth listening to, but she lied. She blatantly lied.
Lied about doing marijuana when it makes her look cool.
And I hate to say this, but I almost feel like she was code switching. Like, are you familiar with code switching?
Give us a breakdown.
Yep.
Okay, so code switching basically, if I'm in a room of a bunch of white people, executives in business suits, like I talk a certain way. Mm-hmm. When I'm in a room with the people I grew up with, who were a majority, like people of color, LGBTQ community, like I speak a different way. And we're a kid in the 90s, the word on the street was ebonics, right? Or like now it's AABE and, whatever you want to call it. So code switching is not always about tone or dialect or inflection, but it can also be about topic and how you present yourself. And I totally believe that she was code switching on that particular radio show. You put her in different situations and her conversation is different. Her demeanor is different. How she presents herself is different. Now, as a woman of color, I understand that in that environment on that radio show, she was very comfortable. Like that's coming home to her, right? So just like me going home to Louisiana or Arizona or, Phoenix, anywhere I have family, like I'm more comfortable, laid back. I'm a little more me. I'm a lot more open, right? And so I think that played a part in it. But there was also like, she's a smart woman when it comes to marketing herself. And she understood who her audience was there. And she was code switching. I
appreciate that breakdown.
Can I jump in here? Because cool story. I'm glad she code switched or whatever, but she still objectively lied. There's no way what she said was true at all. And also, she bragged about doing something that she also put away hundreds of people she put hundreds of people into cages over the thing that she was laughing about, that she lied about doing. I mean, maybe she did it. I don't know. But if she did it, it's even worse because, she's made it to the second most powerful position in America where the people who she's put away didn't even get that chance. Yeah, we lost her.
Yeah, we might have lost her. Lou will be back in a second. Kamala is... and I think I've been pronouncing it wrong. I'm aware it's Kamala Harris. I'm just not good at pronouncing it correctly. Kamala Harris is not a good person. I think there's a lot of people who, and I mean that I phrase that intentionally because here's the thing. I understand when you're a prosecutor, your job is to prosecute. I get that. Let's say I give you I'll give you the Nuremberg defense. Say like, fine, I was just doing my job, right? Like, I'm sorry I did this terrible thing. I was just doing my job. It's what I was assigned to do. Here's the problem with Kamala Harris. She broke a lot of laws and butchered a lot of evidence to make those people in prison. This wasn't just I'm sorry, the law says you have to go to prison. This was I'm going to fabricate a story. I'm going to ignore witness testimonies. You're going to prison no matter what. I mean, this is incarcerating innocent people. There was somebody on death row, and she tried to suppress evidence that would have exonerated this person. I mean, it's. I will go into Kamala on a different day. I am glad on one hand that we have I am glad that we're breaking color barriers. Look, we're a sexist nation. We're a racist nation. I'm so glad we're getting rid of all those things. I'm a
hardcore feminist, and I have spent so many years being an activist for causes that affect low income, people of color, LGBTQ, any, marginalized community, right? And this upsets me so deeply because what we fight for so hard, and I know we want to really get into that another time, but really quickly, like what we have fought so hard for in getting, all these marginalized groups to a level where we can also take a stand on the platform, right? Not that. Like, it's so frustrating because there's a sense of obligation, right, to be supportive. She's a woman of color. We need to be cheering for this, right? But that's so surface.
Ryan seems to disagree.
Well, my disagreement is that you should not support her because of these things that are immutable characteristics. That's the whole point of feminism, is to not take into account the immutable characteristics.
Totally agree. And that's my point, is that it's like, it's frustrating for me because I'm like, there's part of me that's like, yes, we have a black woman as the vice president. And that's amazing. But she's a horrible human. Like, we have so many better people to represent, women.
Right.
Women of color.
Joe Jorgensen, for example.
It's the example. It's like finding out Jackie Robinson was like a serial killer. You just be like, I'm really glad we broke the color barrier, but I might not still think of Jackie Robinson the same way.
But it's more simple than that. Yes, it's great that we have a woman of color as the second most powerful person in the nation. But what they do with that power is perpetuating the institutional racism that we're all complaining about. So it's like, well, maybe we just shouldn't do that. Maybe that shouldn't be the basis that we celebrate.
Mm-hmm. But if you say that out loud, you're a bad leftist.
Well, I'm a bad leftist, so.
Hey, I want to throw this out there too.
Shut up and be a good lefty and just.
If I know, and I include myself in this category, people that were apprehensive about like Black Lives Matter, man, follow them on Twitter, and there is no organization that's more against Biden and Kamala Harris than Black Lives Matter. I mean, whatever you thought before, put it out of your mind. I thought the same thing. I saw the Marxist stuff. I saw like some creepy, like we don't care about people's personal property stuff. No, man.
I'm gonna be a day one. Like I've been out on the streets and I've gone to the protests and I've donated. Like we actually, in our tattoo shop, we hosted a BLM day where we had like a handful of flash designs that were, quick, small, minimum stuff we could bang out really quick. And then like a percentage plus, any tips went to our local Team Bad Leftist, went to our local BLM groups. So.
Yeah. Jackie's making us laugh. Team Bad Leftist, Team Bad Rightist. Yeah, this is good stuff. Guys, that's the first segment of this show, so please hang tight, and we're going to do the second part of the show and give you a piece of our mind in just a moment. All right, everybody, it's time to give you a piece of our mind. So I will start to show you all how it's done, and I got to tell you, this has been getting to me. I'm going to cut loose as much as I can cut loose with only one.
Guys, Hodey's about to cut loose.
One can of caffeine.
Whatever that
I'm
means.
like, I'm sitting here going, oh God, I really have to go to the bathroom, but this is about to get really good.
Lou, I feel like we are about to hear the word heckin' again from someone else.
OMG.
Maybe I'll do like the white person from Minnesota, like, let me tell you what really sticks in my craw.
I'm all about
What grinds my gears?
Grinds my gears. Yes!
Yeah.
Exactly.
This friggin' heckin' country that thinks they can tell us what to do. No.
Internet. Really good at that. That's impressive.
Thank you. Believe it or not, I have the complexion that says I have practice at this. So I do want to say this. I am so huge on culture. When you take a philosophy class, they usually teach you there's two ways that you can enforce what's a right. There are two ways to define it. One is something you're willing to do violence to preserve. And two, something society has accepted and will not accept any intrusion on. Those are the two ways that you can define it. Now, we as libertarians, a lot of times we get caught in the first category. If you do this, we will do violence to you. In my personal opinion, that has failed because, frankly, the government is intruding on you in so many ways that if you believe in doing violence, you would have done it already. So I believe in it that it is time to fix and time to try to win through a libertarian culture. And what that means is accepting people's radical individualism and not just accepting, but celebrating it. Not just dealing with it, but cherishing it. Wanting these people to be different, wanting different perspectives, wanting people to be different than us, and wanting to say, you have a home here within the liberty movement. I am so glad you are here. You are not like me at all. That's cool. I really like that about you. We look at, I'm also a capitalist. We look at division of labor. Look, there's a lot of things I could do, but I can't educate myself about everything. Even I've dipped it. I think I've dipped the toe into every economic study there is. I am not going to outwit any economic giant on any one of those schools of economy. I liked to fraternize. I like to kind of, hey, let me hear what you think. Let me study this. Let me read this. All right. And there's going to be somebody who's dedicated 40 years of their lives to one like syndicalism or something. And I'm just like, I kind of know what that is, and I'm proud of myself for knowing the definition. That's about it, and that is and that is a good thing. And so we should take these expertise and encourage them. And we do have cultures that we feel we can't stand up to sometimes. We have had to do it here on the Weird Libertarians Network before. We've done it on our page. When we realized that there were an inordinate amount of people that were kind of in our comment section saying casually racist things, that it was scaring away our viewership. And I don't think we ever turned a blind eye to it. I just don't think we policed our comment section. We just said, people comment whatever. We finally decided to dive in and do some exploration and I think it comes from people saying, hey, this kind of stuff makes me uncomfortable. We didn't know. We probably just lost them following our page and viewing us and interacting with us, and finally somebody was like, hey, I love your show. I can't stand these people. So we make a thing and we think it's casual, right? We think it's easy. We just say, hey, racism's dumb. Racism's stupid, irrational, repugnant. I know that's part of like the LP platform, but it's dumb. Like if you're a racist, you're a loser, and we don't do racism here. Man, I got to tell you, flooded with hate, flooded with anger, like so much backlash, and everything from the white, like, oh, you're so brave taking a stand against racism. Good for you. Well, apparently we had to, because look at the litany of people we made angry when we called it out, that they get mad about it. And so it's just one of those things that we say. So what we had to do is we had to manufacture a culture. And a lot of times people think culture it's organic. And of course, that's ideal, that it just happens, that everything just happens correctly. Guess what? We're in a culture that has given us Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Mike Pence. The culture isn't cutting it. Okay, right. So we can't just rely on organic success anymore. What we have to do now is rely on doing something, on making a change. And so what you have to do then is decide what that change is going to be. I was on somebody's libertarian social media the other day. Chase Oliver is a good friend of mine, and he's agreed to be an occasional contributor on the show. And
just so you know, I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, and Chase is a very active member down here in Georgia. Ran a wonderful campaign for the 5th District U.S. House when John Lewis passed away. There was a special election, so there's a little background, and I'm personally friends with Chase Oliver. So
me too. I made the
anyway.
video.
Sorry.
Really?
Sorry to cut you off.
So you all know him better than I do. I just like the guy. That's all I have. I mean,
we spend a couple hours a month cleaning up my park that's less than a mile away for libertarian causes, and Chase is a personal friend of mine.
Awesome. Well, I like Chase, and Chase just made the comment, and I'm going to approximate this comment because I don't have it in front of me, but just said, I'm getting the vaccine, and you know what, after I get vaccinated, I'm going to go out and I'm not going to be I'm going to be guilt-free because I know I'm not going to make anybody else sick. And that was the extent of the comment. Got moderate, whatever, the usual likes, dislikes. It was shared by a certain podcaster. And then
are we not naming the person?
Within an hour. No, we can do it. Now, here's the thing. I've already clashed with Dave Smith before. Dave Smith, I'm not anti-Dave Smith. I know this is going to look like it because it's like the second anti-Dave Smith thing I've done in forever.
Can I jump in? I'm sorry. Is this a bad should we not jump in while you're like doing your thing? I don't even know.
If you would like to, I'll allow it. I'll give you.
Dave Smith just did. He basically copied and pasted Chase's tweet and retweeted it with a quote, and the quote was just something different. And I was like, well, that's true. So, after all is said and done, what I did was copied. I took a screenshot of his retweet with both comments and just said, hey, libertarians are great because we can have different opinions about things, and still be on the same side. Dave Smith just said, I'm not getting a vaccine and I'm not feeling guilty. Sorry to steal your thunder, Hodey.
Right. It's okay. So that's what I was getting to, is basically Chase said, I am getting the vaccine, so I won't feel guilty. Dave responded, I'm not getting the vaccine, so I won't, and I won't feel guilty. Fine, right? Like, I think that part's fine, right? Yeah. So this issue, I just want to be very clear, because Dave Smith actually listens to the show and took offense with me. I did misquote him once. I apologized on the last episode that I did. My bad. I'm not anti-Dave Smith. I actually enjoyed Part of the Problem. Please listen. Whatever. Okay, all that. Here's the problem. When he said that, Chase got, it's down to like 400 comments now. But it was up to like 600, and so they've had to take down like 200 that involved calling him homophobic slurs, calling him retarded, calling him, just throwing the book at him, saying I think he's Chase for Liberty on Twitter. Yeah. There you go. There's a free plug, Chase. They told him he should take the liberty out of his name. They said he's not a real libertarian and all this. And it's just like, and Dave Smith, to his credit, was even said like, I'm not saying that Chase is a bad guy. I just posted, and then my fans did this. I've been there, Dave. I understand. I understand when you're like, geez, I thought my fan base was like this, but it turns out some of them are like this. Now, I also agree with Dave that that's not the majority of the fan base. This is just the loudmouths, but unfortunately, the loudmouths drive a lot of the culture. Let's be honest here. That's actually can be a good thing, right? Martin Luther King Jr. would not shut up. He was a loudmouth and therefore got a lot of what he wanted because he would not quit. These people show a lot of tenacity in being bigots. Obvious bigots, obvious homophobes, some of these comments, obvious ableists. They didn't even hide it. Every person that has his in his profile is an idiot and statist and deserves to die and throw him out of helicopters and all that stuff. And it was just the most crazy, like you can't, and here's the thing, like, I understand the situation he's in because I was in there and I didn't do it on purpose before. Like we here on We Are Libertarians, I never cultivated any of it. If somebody asked me, I would have said it sucked. My first I wouldn't say all of We're Libertarians. For me, I tend to be like a really economically driven person. I admit it. And so like I'd go along with that. And if it came up, I'd condemn racism, but that doesn't come up a lot with that. So what I had to do is when that kind of thing would happen is we had to say, I'd go out of my way and take some time and say, hey guys, like, here's the deal. I want to convert racism. I'm not even trying to drive you away if you are a racist, but you cannot talk to other people on the show like this. You can't do this in the comments. Like, I want you to find liberty. I want your racism to go away. And that doesn't do that when you're alone and when I've cast you out and you're on Reddit, but you will be able to find a place here, but you are going to have to talk to people and treat them fairly. And that's just our rules here. That's just how we do it. And so I think for me, there just comes a time when you have to fix your culture, to look at it and say, this is what I've cultivated. I understand. Look, people don't want to admit it. And they just want to say like, those are loudmouths. They're loosely affiliated. I don't know them. I know Jacob, who is also a contributor to the show. He's a member of the Mises Caucus. He does a good job. You can message him at any time. If any member of the Mises Caucus is acting a fool, you can message, screenshot it, throw it to Jacob Weinograd, and he will take care of it and do whatever penalties need to be done. But there does come a point where you say like, why is this way? Why did this happen? How did this happen? And how do I make that not happen? Because I want this to be a place where people embrace liberty and not where people like be racist and be awful. And so I just wanted to share that story. I know I'm a little long in the tooth on that, but it's just, it is something that meant a lot to me because I've seen it and I've been there before. And so I have the experience of understanding what it's like to be like, I don't know why. I'm not even saying that because it happened with my show. We're Libertarians, the main show. We have a black co-host. It's Chris Spangle and Harry Price, and Harry Price is not white, right? Like, and so it's one of those where you wouldn't think we would have racists. Like, do we have to say it? But we did. And like I said, it's a small majority. Minority. Sorry. I guarantee it's a small minority. But if they're turning people off, call them out. I also do want to say this. It's helpful advice. You don't have to take it, but I would take it because when we started doing this, our downloads, big time increase. I managed the Spike Cohen page. And when he said something anti-racist, yes, of course, there were 80 members that were libertarian right affiliated that got irritated. We're like, you guys are just anti-Trump and you guys are, you guys are just liberals and join the Democratic Party already. And yeah, they were loud. And I'd even say half of our comments were negative. But then you'd open it up and you'd be like, oh, our donorship just increased by 25%. Our reach just increased by 3 times. And our likes and follows on our page doubled. So, hey, Spike, do it again. Like keep going. That's all I got.
And just to sort of follow up to that, I agree with you. And the reality is, when we continue to give a platform to people who have racist, nasty, edgelord things to say, you're driving away the people who are hearing your message and taking it in and living that and taking that out into their life, right? So when you have a message of peace and equality and love and anti-racism and homophobic and, all of those things, transphobic, like anti the isms and the hate and the whatever, and you get those loudmouth people, if you don't stand up for them and you let them continue to run their mouths, people, who agree with you aren't going to take you as seriously because you're not actively standing up to the things you say you're against. And they're not going to want to be around it. That's bad energy. So they're going to leave. So it doesn't take much, but you do have to put in the effort to say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate this. This is our space. Whatever team has created here on this platform. However, this is not a free opportunity for you to spew your hate. If you don't agree, it's one thing, but if you're nasty, I'm sorry, this isn't it. And when you can stand up and say that, we platform, whatever, has standards and has principles, then those who agree with you are going to go, they may not be very loud in their comments, but they're loud in their donations. They're loud in their active listenership. Yep. They're loud in their telling their friends, right? The guy who's running his mouth with nasty racist comments is not the guy sending donations. Even to things he likes. Probably not the type to put his dollars.
They spent them on like monster truck wheels and Oakleys and
probably menthol cigarettes.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
and the Confederate flag that always manages to be like lurking in every single one of their profile pictures.
It's always like Confederate flag, and you're like,
yeah.
It's the Trump frame for me. That's the one.
The Trump.
I just wanted to add that I'm not a Dave Smith fan. I actually, a long time ago, before he was even involved in the LP, he spent a lot of time shitting on the LP, and every time he did that, it turned me off because I was like, look, man, I feel like we're sort of in the same battle, and it's sort of weird that you're shitting on me. And that's how it felt. I don't know if that's how he meant it or not, but that's how it felt. And so I just said, well, I'm not going to listen to this anymore. And what I did, instead of saying anything about it loudly on social media or anything like that, I just stopped downloading the podcast. It just wasn't that hard. I just unsubscribed and moved on with my life. I downloaded, we'll plug somebody. I started downloading Words and Numbers instead, from Fee, a wonderful organization, and my life is better for it. And I didn't have to shit on another libertarian, and I didn't have to yuck their yum. I just moved on. So, included in that, I just wanted to say that I don't think that necessarily like the attraction of negative feelings or negative opinions or racists or anything like that to your message necessarily means that you're doing the wrong thing. So, like, just because you have a bunch of followers who have really shitty opinions does not necessarily mean that you have a shitty opinion. And I don't think it's fair to attribute it to that. Trump is the biggest example of that recently. People would say like, oh, David Duke endorsed him, and so therefore he's a white supremacist. And it's like, well, David Duke sucks. Yeah, I'm in on that. And actually, Donald Trump sucks too. But David Duke's endorsement of Donald Trump does not actually indict Donald Trump necessarily. Not necessarily, right? I mean, if he was out there being white supremacist, then
recording
and I'm sure lots.
Yeah.
What's that?
Recording his vote, right?
Right, and I'm sure lots of people would say that he was out there being white supremacist is fine. I don't think he was very overtly white supremacist. He's problematic for sure. But David Duke's endorsement didn't do anything about that. David Duke also endorsed Joe Biden, just in case anybody didn't know. He basically said that Donald Trump didn't do what he wanted done, and so he endorsed Joe Biden. Leftists have a lot of arguments about why that happened. They have a lot of excuses. What they did was they blamed Donald Trump for gaining that endorsement, but they made a lot of excuses for Biden for gaining that endorsement. When I choose to take people at their word and believe who they say they are, and so I don't do that necessarily. But one of the things that I want to say about the followers of Dave Smith, typically, he's had a pretty strong message of unification and believing, unifying the multiple strains of libertarianism, and not necessarily caring about the language that you speak while you're talking about liberty. And we talk about code switching, and it's definitely alive and well in the liberty movement, where there are people who speak the language of the left and the right, and we tend to shit on each other when we think that I'm sorry for using that language over and over and over again, but we tend to do that for the people who speak the opposite, and we shouldn't. But one of the things I've noticed about the movement behind all of the comments and like Dave Smith's thing with Chase, even though it wasn't Dave Smith, I want to say that over and over and over again. I felt like Dave Smith's comment was actually a really good one. His followers like to talk about gatekeeping in the Libertarian Party and how they have historically been gate kept out. I don't know if that's a verb, but they've been gate kept out. And they talk about how gatekeeping is this like evil whatever, and that there's room for us, and there should be room for us. And then what they do is take it that one extra step further and say that Chase Oliver doesn't belong. And it's like, that's gatekeeping, y'all. Like, Chase Oliver doesn't speak your language. That's fine. What he does is speak the language of liberty. What he does is he talks about how people shouldn't be in cages for nonviolent crimes. What he does is he talks about individuality and making personal choices for yourself. And that's what's important to liberty, regardless if you talk about GSM issues or put he, him in your profile or anything like that. Who cares? Who actually cares about he, him when you're talking about liberty? Because you have the liberty to not put he, him in your profile, and he's not out there shitting on you for not putting that there. Some people are, for sure. Yep. 100%. Some people are doing that. It's not Chase. And so we have to learn in our movement not to go out there and look at people like Chase who are not advocating for really forcing anyone to do anything. He's and
been
say,
anti-lockdown from the beginning.
The words you're using, but like, you're right.
Yeah. Sure. Sorry. Right. It's like let Tom Woods be Tom Woods. Let Chase Oliver be Chase Oliver.
That's right.
Reach your people. Like, and there's no reason Division of Labor, we should be good business partners.
That's right.
Lou, why don't you tell us give us a piece of your mind.
Oh, so I'm totally switching gears here a little bit. Something that's really been on my mind lately, both, politically, professionally, all of these things, is the value of labor, right? And I know that we have a maybe majority libertarian audience here, and a lot of the activists get it. We burn ourselves out for little to nothing, right? I have spent on numerous campaigns up to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for little to nothing. But we do it because we love it. We do it because we're passionate about whatever the cause, the campaign, the candidate, whatever, but there has been this sort of culture developed in the LP of, well, voluntarism means free, right? Oh, you're going to do this $5,000 service for me for nothing, or maybe $100. And there's this sort of double-edged sword, because we understand that, particularly when it comes to campaigns and causes and things like that in the movement, like there's not always a big budget, right? And we do know that fundraising is a big thing, and everybody hates doing it, but we have to. And oh God, fundraising is the worst. Anybody out there listening, don't ever ask me to be a fundraiser for you. I can do a billion things. Fundraising isn't it. But we just don't. And I don't know if it's that we don't have the base, if we don't have the talent pool to go out and do it. I don't know what it is. But I think that over time has created this culture where we do not value people's labor and time appropriately as a party who claims to be pro-capitalist, right? And I say that kind of loosely because we are currently in the middle of linguistic change of the word capitalism, right? And that being a whole other episode of, I say capitalism, I mean free market, I'm free to trade and interact with whomever I want. You say capitalism and it means the exploitation of workers and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's so many different meanings. So I like to use the word free market. However, as, a party who stands on this platform that very much consists of free market and capitalism, paying for things that are worth whatever, we do not value each other's time and labor and effort. We just don't. And I very recently, which is kind of ironic that this is legitimately the second podcast I've done in several years of working in the party. Most of the work I've done has been like sort of behind the scenes. I do a lot of social media, journalism, PR stuff. And so I'm very rarely the face, right? I'm the voice behind the face. That's, that's usually me. So it's kind of ironic that I'm appearing here now because officially I have my work in the party. As far as accepting any roles in campaigns, I have run my own business for quite a while doing PR, graphics, marketing, the whole shebang. And out of my own pocket, and I don't think that a lot of people understand this, I pulled my retirement and every penny I had to develop a system and build tools and get access to databases, over $10,000. And I have spent 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on campaigns to utilize these systems in a way that I can just say, okay, here's all of this stuff. I'm going to get you what you need, package it neatly and organized, and here you go. And there comes a point where, I want to volunteer this and I want to give and give and give, but I can't. I'm burnt. I'm fried, right? And then if I look on the civilian side and take exactly what I'm doing for our party, or what I had done for our party, and do it in the civilian corporate world, right? The big bad corporate world, I'd be making 6+ figures. Now, I never expect that, regardless of party, unless I'm actually working for like the presidential campaign of the R's or D's, right? I never expect that kind of income. Nobody should on political campaigns, except from, talking about local stuff. It's never going to be big dollar. But there's something, and there is a culture of not truly valuing labor and time that people commit. So I pivoted, right? And I'm still in the process of sort of finalizing some things on my exit. But I've pivoted, and some of you know, some of you don't. I started tattooing, and which is sort of a straight, like most people drop out of college and tattoo, and your parents are like, you're ruining your life, right? But when you do it after college, after a very successful career, and you're like in your late 30s and have kids, your parents are like, I'm so proud of your artistic abilities. Just so you know, if you ever want to do something crazy, wait till you're in your 30s. But what I thought was strictly a LP culture is not. And I'm learning that the hard way. One of the things that we experience a lot in the tattoo industry is someone will come in with this big, brilliant, amazing idea for a piece of art they want on their body. And we are tasked with creating it. Now, we all know Risa, right? Risa Willis, who does this amazing artwork. She does these colored pencil drawings of super realistic animals. Mm-hmm. And the amount of money that, first of all, let's be realistic. She probably is charging less than half of what other professional artists charge for a commissioned piece just like this.
Yep.
But it's pricey. But it's worth it. What is it about tattoos specifically that people don't think that our time and energy and effort and labor into creating an original piece of commissioned art for you isn't worth you paying a drawing deposit? Because if you don't show up on the day I've scheduled you for 6 hours of work after I've already put in 10 hours of drawing, I just made $0 if I don't have a butt parked in that seat. And then, and that ties in with something, I think Hodey and I were talking about this prior to the show. Something we're seeing a lot of right now is people complaining that the service industries, fast food, things like that, everybody's like closing early. We're closed. We don't have the help. We're hiring. We need bodies. Blah blah blah. And there's this massive blame game happening and going around discussing the idea that, oh, it's because everybody's getting free money from the government and it's all about the unemployment. No, it's because people are not valuing labor the way they should. Those jobs are $7 an hour, $7.50 an hour, $9 at the best. You make manager, you're making $9 an hour, maybe $12 if you're lucky. It's insane. And I'm not like, I'm going to pause right here. I'm not a like, woo, $15 an hour, let's mandate that. Like, that's not my thing, because I understand that will kill thousands of small businesses. Maybe it should be a percentage. Maybe it should, I don't know.
Lou, can I jump in a little bit here?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to say that I think it's worthwhile to say that it's a combination of the two. People were already frustrated with the amount of compensation that they were getting, and then also this pandemic came along where we flooded a bunch of money into the economy and then made it worthwhile for them not to work. And so the people who were on the edge said, you know what? Screw it, man. I'm just going to do what I'm doing. And that's that. It sort of gave them the power to do that. Now, whether that's good or bad, we can probably discuss for hours and hours and hours, but I don't think it's very useful to say it's one thing and not the other and not this and it is this. It's both. It's both things. It's a very complicated thing that happened.
Totally agree with you. In fact, and that's exactly what I had said to Hodey, and I was working my way there.
Sorry.
No, but you're absolutely right, and I totally agree with you. Like, I think what it was is, honestly, a lot of people getting laid off, getting the unemployment, the stimulus, people who were like on the cusp of like, I could actually kind of quit and still collect, and survive, are people who were like, oh my God, I am paycheck to paycheck on this minimum wage. I cannot quit to work on myself, to finish 3 credits I need for my degree, to do blah, 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 and blah, to take the time to go find and go interview. But now they had that sort of something to bridge the gap, right? And what I'm finding here, and this is specific to Indiana, we are a big industry. Like, we have a lot of plants, a lot of metal fabrication type stuff. And all these plants pay pretty well. They have great benefits, all of this, but they are such in high demand jobs, particularly like first shift, that there was almost never anything available. And if there was, like, you kind of had to know somebody, right? And everybody who was sort of like in other service industries who were making minimum wage had been wanting so badly to get into these industries. Well, when all the layoffs happened at the beginning of the pandemic, now we're opening back up. And so everybody's flooding to these other industries that start at, we have an Amazon plant here. And of course people are, oh, Jeff Bezos didn't pay taxes. Yeah, well, they start at $18 an hour. So, pick your battles, for Christ's sakes. And everybody I know who works at this plant loves it. They have great benefits. Their time off is wonderful, blah, 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 the whole thing. So yes, you are correct. Like, it is both things. I think that gap filler allowed people a moment to breathe and finish their degrees or take time to really hone their skills and do this and that. And me included. I got laid off from a job as a curriculum developer for a finance company. Right? Like, that doesn't sound like me at all.
Yeah, no, I'm like listening to you talk and I'm like, well, one of these things is not like the others.
Right?
Tattoo artist, curriculum developer, and also Wonder Woman.
To the, curriculum developer to the man.
Yeah.
Right? Well, no, I mean, I did do a lot of that for Larry Sharp, and he is the man.
Yeah, he is the
I
man.
have to always.
We can all agree on that.
And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his advice 3-4 years ago. Follow your dreams, do this, do that. Anyway, so the point of all of that is I'm coming to understand that it really doesn't matter what you do. There is a culture in this entire country of not valuing labor the way that we should. Whether that's, monetarily in appreciation. Hell, tipping, right? We see this debate a lot, and when we talk about in restaurant industry, wait staff. Same, tattooing is commonly known as a tipping environment. Like, you go get a tattoo, if you like it, you're happy, you tip. I don't know if people don't know that or if they don't care. I don't know. It's strange. And this is something I'm learning that isn't just insular to the LP. It's everywhere. And it's frustrating. I think you're just appreciate each other more.
Hodey, I don't know the format of this thing, but I'm going to jump in again just because.
You're faster than me on the draw. You win.
I just want to push back against the fact that we don't value labor. We value labor, free markets, and sometimes we have them in America. There are some out there, and they're all bastardized greatly by the government and cronyist policies and things like that. But we do value labor generally. And the way that we know that is that people were working those hours. Now, I won't fault the people who were working in those environments from saying, well, it wasn't great. And so this other situation that's better for me, I'm going to move into that. That makes total sense. You will always move into a better situation for yourself. That makes a lot of sense to me. But it doesn't mean that it didn't make sense at the time to do the thing before. And so, and that your value, the value of your labor was not being appreciated, because it was. Otherwise, you would have quit. Like really, like you just would have gotten out of that somehow, some way. You would have been like, F you, I'm out.
I don't know. And maybe this is specific to my community, right? We have a very large, low income community. Many people are barely paycheck to paycheck. So the idea of quitting means your family is homeless in a week. It doesn't give you the opportunity, and you're working crazy at second shift because that's all you could get. That's all that was available, second shift. Well, if you've ever worked second shift, there's no time for any kind of life.
But you did it, and you I know you think the alternative was, if I quit, I'll be homeless, but like that probably is a little hyperbolic. What's that?
I have been in that position. It literally was the alternative. I packed everything I owned, myself and my kid, in my pickup truck and left. And the choice that you picked was, I'm going to work for something that did not put me in that situation, and it didn't put you in that situation. You're correct. Right? You're correct. But in that time, like, that was my only option. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. Right. So it went from like, I have this barely paycheck to paycheck to I'm practically like, I got nothing in a
I think my point is that the existence of better situations does not preclude the situation that you're in from being negative. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not negative just because there's a better way to be.
I agree.
All right. So y'all, you're dealing with a lot of hypotheticals, and you should have asked the man first. This is why I should have been faster on that trigger.
To argue. I think you put a center and a left in here, and I felt that I needed to be right.
I'm about to go so far right wing that I'm going to sound left wing for a second, and let me explain that, because that actually is true. because I'm about to dunk on some like hardcore capitalist values right here. So I actually was working at Golden Corral making tips before the pandemic. Pandemic shut us down. I got the chance to pursue my dream job. I now write for video games instead of working at Golden Corral.
Wait,
now,
what video games? Can you tell me about that? I'm sorry.
I'm a video game writer. I actually write for
what does that mean? What do you write for?
I write for Game Rant and I write for The Gamer. The parent company is Valnet. They also own Screen Rant, a few others. But yeah,
send me stuff. I'm a gamer. So
comic book resources. So, for example, tomorrow I am going to live stream playthrough Resident Evil Village, and I'm going to write 25 plus articles about it within the next week. So there you go.
Well, don't send me that. Don't send me that.
A lot of guides, a lot of top 10 stuff. I just finished doing a lot of articles about MLB The Show. And I did basically, if it's a hit release, I'm going to be writing about it. So yeah, that's my ish. But that was my dream job. And so here's the thing. I'm not unique. If you look at it, the unemployment rate is not through the roof right now, which is a freaky thing for all these service providers, people that need people in the service industry, because right now they're without people to give the service. And those people are no longer unemployed. Let me tell you something about servers. They are hustlers. Anybody who's good at service does not want anybody who's working in service that wants a $15 minimum wage. You're an idiot. You get out of here. Like, you don't get it, right? Because here's the thing. Take my whole paycheck. We don't make paychecks. Are you serious? They usually pay you like $2, $1, $3 an hour. The government takes the whole thing. So I actually, because I don't like paying taxes, was like, I don't even want to be on the clock. I don't want to pay them anything, just let me work here, right? And they're like, oh, that's better for us. We don't have to pay. We don't have to pay taxes. We don't got to pay you. We don't got to pay the government. This works for everybody, right? I probably shouldn't be saying that, but yeah, I had a really cool manager at Golden Corral. He was dope. Anyway, so you show up. And I just want the tips. So what I do is I'm just like, all right, here's the thing. I can get $25 an hour if I'm super cool with people, if I'm funny, if I'm engaging, if I'm doing if I'm doing my job, obviously, I can get $15 an hour. So when somebody's like, we don't want to tip, we just want you to make minimum wage, I'm like, you are talking about cutting my wages into like a $7 an hour job, and I won't work that job anymore. So here's the thing. People aren't going out as often. We know that just empirically, data. And the job is harder because of all the restrictions we placed upon it. And what happens when you do that to a whole bunch of people that are used to hustling? I want to note that a lot of these billboards that you're talking about, that we're talking about that are across the nation, like, please show up. We're looking for people who are on time. We just want people to show up to their interviews. The reason you're having that problem is because the people that were the most on time, the most willing to pick up shifts, they didn't just sit around during the pandemic. They made themselves better. You're talking about hustlers. These people are the captains of hustling. Like, I'm telling you, I have never worked at a restaurant where I made less than the manager there. Never. Not once. I've worked at Golden Corral. I've worked at Buffalo Wild Wings. I've worked at Texas Roadhouse. I've even worked at freaking Chick-fil-A, and I could fill up the jar on cashier faster than my manager could make dollars per hour. I mean, it's just, and that is the nature of the person who is there. And so the idea that these people just got lazy is incredibly inaccurate. They're no longer available. The numbers show that out. We went and did something else. Now, here's the important thing. And here's where I'm going to say that I went so far. I'm going to go so far right on capitalism that I'm going to sound like a lefty. I like the socialist definition of capitalism, because what the socialists did is because capitalism wasn't a term, and the socialists look at cattle and they say, well, who owns the cow? And the socialist actually said, the capitalists would say the individual owns the cow. And the capital actually refers to the head of cattle. So who owns that head of cattle? An individual should own that head of cattle. Okay. What do we have? Do we have a society that does that? Let me ask you this. If you work at McDonald's and you're working the fryer, do you own your fryer? Do you own the fries that come out of that fryer? No, you don't. Do you get a percentage of the profits? No, you don't. This is incredibly...
Wait. You do get a percentage of the profits. You get the percentage of the profits that you agreed to work per hour.
You get a wage slave, which is mandated by you get a captive wage slave.
Come on, you agreed to it.
You get a set wage that is set by the government. Frederick Douglass, I love the dude because he advocated for wage slavery before he called it wage slavery, and said like, hey, this seems better. This protects people. And then he saw the result of it and was like, no, you make a lot more money on like getting a percentage of the profits. Too bad legally we will punish you if you don't pay people their wage slave. Government loved it. Big business loved it. People did not like it.
So let's just say that the income of a business remains static for whatever reason, and it won't. It doesn't make this is wildly theoretic.
Sure.
But you were not working at that place, then they would make the profit that you produced without paying you, right? And so when you decide to work there, you're cutting into the profits of the company that you decide to work for. So you are, in fact, earning a percentage of the profits of the company that you're working for.
But here's the thing. Your wage is paid from that profit. It is not a percentage of the profit. Now, I am talking about something ridiculously dangerous
percentage
here.
Of the profit. A percentage is a static thing. I mean, it's a.
It is.
It's not a
percentages aren't static. If I grow my business by $100,
any given business, I could take your income and the profit of the company, and I could say it was a percentage of the profit. I could come up with that number.
Okay, so here's the deal, and here's why you're wrong. Adam Smith goes into great detail about this when he talks about nails, right? He loved to look at how different places handled making nails. As they say, who gets these nails afterward? How do they split those rates?
Did that? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
This is Adam Smith.
Okay. Cool.
And so what he looked at is who makes the nails. Now, first he looked at how they made the nails, and that's how he kind of arrived at the division of labor thing. But then he's like, how do these people become prosperous? Well, it's in the way in which that they sell those nails. Now, the ones that have a corporation that sells it and then says, hey, I tell you what, I'll give you each $15 an hour. Don't care how many nails you make. You're each getting $15 an hour, whatever. Those people were not as prosperous as the ones who say, hey, I'm going to sell it and we're all getting X percent. And that X percent is higher because those people have more incentive to do that.
Yeah,
and
carrots are better than sticks. Got it.
Right. Yeah. And that's all I'm saying. And so the thing is this sound, as I said, it's such a right-wing theory that it sounds left, but that's only because of the times that we're in right now.
You didn't
because
actually prove me wrong. You just said another thing that was right. It's fine. It's fine.
Maybe I didn't say it in a way that you enjoyed the first time. I'm sorry, Ryan. But this is one of those things that it's one of the reasons I love capitalism is because you look out and you say, who owns that cow? You should own your fryer. You should own a percentage of those sales, and you should have stake in ownership in that, and people should know it. Now, a lot of people
buy the fryer? I'm sorry. I'm just going to jump in here. Did you buy the fryer?
Yes. I'm not saying it should be given to you. Yeah, you buy the fryer.
You buy your own fryer and then bring the fryer to McDonald's and say, like, I've got this fryer here. I'd like to make French. I'm really good with it. What? Why would McDonald's not just buy the fryer and then just say, like, you come make fries in my fryer?
They just might do that.
Well, they do that.
They rent it to you.
Well, no, because
of course,
FDA,
at a wage.
What kind of fryer and who needs to be in charge and have their name on it, and how often it needs to be inspected and blah, blah, blah. So it has to be a McDonald's fryer. It can't be your fryer because that's a liability. Thank you, government.
Right. So, right.
Well, that's fair.
You want things fixed, right? Anyway, all I'm saying is, Lauren, I get it. I do want to turn this back to your point, which is specifically about people in service. Let me ask you this. When we looked at, let me give you an example of somebody in the service industry. Let's take the referees in football. They're not providing the product. They're just providing some service with it. How much was it worth to football fans when those replacement refs stepped on the field versus the good ones? How much more were they willing to pay for that superiority? And people will pay for that superior service. And so the thing is service is very valuable, even as a function of profits. Because Lauren, you're correct. A lot of people tend to look at just pure product and say, this is all that matters. Product is all that matters. Service matters a great deal. The people who paid me were happy to pay me, I think. I don't remember drawing a gun on too many of them, but I had a great sob story too for my life and how things were going. But yeah, I do appreciate that because I love to talk economics anytime I can, especially when I get to sound like a right winger and the left winger at the same time. Ryan, please give us a piece of your mind.
Oh boy, I feel like we're running late on time. Lou? What's up? Yeah,
super quickly.
Yeah,
I was waiting, but I wanted to really quickly touch back on a point where you talk about how people in the service industry, particularly like food, bars, that sort of thing, are truly hustlers. And I have to give the biggest shout out to one of the most amazing women I know, Chrissy Wiggers, because when this all started, she was still in school and bartending and whatever. And then after the pandemic, like through that, like that girl has hustled her ass off while, might I add, she was out actively protesting in Ohio, and she was hitting the state house, and she was talking to the news and writing press releases and working her ass off here. She was also hustling for her life. And it's her personal and I know she likes to keep some of that private, so I'm not going to like say any details. That girl went from bartending in college to like her dream freaking job and actually being offered a job way better than the one she actually interviewed for at that company. Like they called her back and were like, sorry, you didn't get this, but we're going to give you like 87 levels above because we think you're that awesome. Because she's that kind of hustler. She's exactly the kind of woman you were talking about, Hodey. And I just wanted to give a shout out to her because as soon as you said that, she was the one that popped in my mind.
Truly free markets at work. People value labor. I will tell you that. People value labor.
For sure.
Anyway.
Okay. Yes and no. Yes and no.
Well, you just gave a great example of the value of labor. And
no, you are correct. I think people don't understand the value of certain types of labor.
Until you see the fail Mary, Packers and Seahawks fans, until you've seen the fail Mary, you don't know the value of good labor.
You just gave an example of a company valuing labor. I don't know any other way to explain that.
I'm sure there's counterexamples as well, but I do want we have to get to Ryan before this thing ends.
Well,
I'm sure we will argue it other
times. We are libertarians fashion. We should just go forever, right? I mean, we should just talk for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, that's right. Just no deadlines, no respect for the audience's time.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about immigration, and one of the biggest things that people say on Facebook and Twitter or whatever is I'd be a libertarian except for your stance on immigration. You can't have immigration. You can't have free immigration. And my stance, just so we're all very, very clear, the free movement of peaceful people should not be inhibited in any way. In any way, period, 100%. That does not mean that I don't believe there should be checkpoints where people come in and say, I'm a peaceful person. And you say, yeah, okay, cool, check. You're a peaceful person. We know that. And by peaceful person, I mean that you have not been convicted of any crime with due process, which is very key of any kind of violent crime with a victim. Right. And so with due process would require us to say that these countries actually have due process. So you can't say, well, you're coming from Russia and they said that this and that and whatever. But it was because Putin said you're this, that, and whatever. That's not due process. And so we don't allow that. And people will say, well, that'll allow too many people. And I'm like, I don't really care. So like that's not really an argument. We were founded as a nation that said we would rather have 9 innocent people go free than 1 innocent people get convicted of a crime. Right. I mean, we are 9 guilty people go free than 1 innocent person be convicted of a crime. Sorry, I got that wrong. I'm a couple of beers deep. And that's what we believe in. That's the American dream. That's the principle that we were founded on. And I'm really excited to be part of that. But the first thing that everyone says, specifically people from the right, and I do hate right and left, and I know that's wrong on this podcast, and I probably have argued the right side a lot of times here, but
I needed a right-leaning voice. You've done fantastic.
I appreciate. I called myself center, and I lied. It just depends on who I'm talking to, I think. But the people on the right will say, well, we have this welfare country. We have this country founded on not founded on. We have this country that has all this welfare, the welfare state. And so we can't let these people in. And so what they've done is they've let terrible policy dictate even more terrible policy. And that frustrates me to no end, that they say, well, we can't let people be free because we don't let people be free. Is basically the argument.
But it's not true.
And what I say is that as long as you're making that argument, you're making the argument to make it bad in all cases. You're saying that we can't do this because of the welfare state. We can't let people be free because of the welfare state. And so therefore we should not let people be free, and we should let the welfare state exist. I mean, it's like this crazy like status thing where I say maybe we should let these people in, and if they are having such an impact on the welfare state, if in fact that's true, and Lou, I agree with you actually that it's not actually true. They do not have an impact on the welfare state. But if they do, if we just accept this premise, then the only way we'll be able to tear it down is if there's stress on it. So we have to stress out the welfare state. So in this like weird world where we're in saying that they both can't, they're both true at the same time, and that we can't let them in here because they're going to stress us out for whatever reason, we are not having freedom in the welfare state, and we are not having freedom of peaceful people to move across borders. And I'm like, let's change it. Let's toss it up. Let's just like see what happens when we like throw some stress at this thing.
So you're taking the Darwinism approach.
A little bit. I mean, there's not going to be any movement unless like we're not going to be able to attack the welfare state as long as it's like stable, which it is like arguably right this very instant stable, and that's all people can see. But if people are like, shit, in like 2 years this is going to fail because of all these immigrants, then like maybe we should start peeling it back. Right.
I can give you my thoughts pretty succinctly on this. I wrote an article for a published article in The Heretic about open borders. I believe I called it the Four Absurdities of Border Control. It got some real actual mainstream reading, and it was really cool.
What's The Heretic? The Heretic in Atlanta is a gay bar.
Oh, not that one. I'm not supposed to talk about that one on air. not when my girlfriend's still in the room. Anyway, it was run by Ryan Lindsay. It's now defunct, but it's still up there and still available to see. And it exploded for good and bad reasons. I would say it was about 50-50. Like people loved it and hated it, but I think I had something like 80 plus studies and links and something like that to it. And it's a quick enough read. I think it's like a 5-minute article if you go through it. But I think I can summarize this down to 30 seconds. It's not welfare spending is non-discretionary, which means it's on a fixed percentage. It can go up and down, but it's up and down based on a percentage. If you believe that immigrants, as Ryan correctly noted, which good for you, Ryan. I haven't heard many people say this, but we would look. The people who are coming in currently would not overburden the welfare system because they are net positives. If we did open our borders, we would get a lot of people who were not net positives because they want. America's a lot better than a lot of some of these other countries are doing. Some of that's America's fault, but they would come here, and more people would come here who are indeed destitute, who are in need of help. Okay. First of all, you should be really excited to help these folks and form them into the new libertarians. But secondly, they would overburden the system. And because that system, like I said, it's fixed. It's a slice of pie. So if we have 80 more people grabbing a slice of pie, what happens to the slice of that pie? It gets thinner. You're going to get less people dependent on that because that slice of that pie is so thin. And then you're going to say, we might as well not have it anymore. Make it go away. That's kind of that is boiling it down. I do go into some more details as far as monetarily why that works out. But Ryan, I applaud you for understanding how that works, because you actually protect the welfare state by having closed borders. Bernie Sanders was okay with closed borders for the longest time. He changed his tune when it didn't become popular, but he was closed borders for the longest time because you have to be. Yeah, look at any Scandinavian country that has expansive welfare states, very very enforced borders, very enforced immigration controls, and those two things are hand in hand. The reason Hayek actually became a capitalist after he was a socialist was because he decided it was unethical to enforce borders, and he would have to do so to become a socialist. Right. So to enforce a socialist utopia.
That is true.
I didn't do that in 30 seconds, but there it is. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate my guests. Ryan and Lou, Ryan, you came in like last second, and I really appreciate it. We're going to have to skip on a show today. Ryan saves our lives. Thank you very much.
Woo! I almost didn't make it.
Lou almost didn't make it. Lou is just moving in, everybody. So if you're worried about like her mic or internet or whatever, she is on the most makeshift of makeshift. Look at behind her. She doesn't have anything set up, and she set up this podcasting stuff literally just for us.
I'm sorry. I thought the stonework is fantastic. Or I think the stonework is fantastic, and the bookcase that is inset in the stonework, I was like, I've been pretty impressed with that throughout.
So we're gonna turn this into the master bedroom eventually. Like maybe we should do an episode that's all about like my new interior design. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody wants to watch my
two thumbs up, Lou.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you guys.
Anyhow, thank you both so much for joining the show. We will hear from you both probably later on. I've got a bunch of lefty, righty, and centrist hosts to hear from. And if you're ever interested in left, right, and center libertarian positions, please listen to Enemy of My Enemy on the We're Libertarians Network. Listener, I love you, and I'll see you next time.